You know what's worse than losing a fight in anime? Trusting someone. Like genuinely, wholeheartedly putting your faith in a character only for the show to grab that faith, fold it into a paper airplane, and throw it straight into a volcano. Betrayals in anime hit different because they're not just plot twists. They rewrite everything you thought you understood about a character, a relationship, sometimes the whole damn story. I've been wrecked by enough of these to know that some betray your expectations, some betray your emotions, and a few betray your ability to ever trust fictional people again. So today, let's talk about the moments that turned allies into nightmares.
この世界のすべてを知る者、気流院財閥の総帥、気流院ら何のつもりだ、サツキ。演説はそこまでだ、理事長。
For half the show, Satsuki Kiryuin is the final boss. Iron-willed, untouchable, standing on top of Honnouji Academy like a dictator carved from marble. Every frame screams, "This is the villain," and I bought it completely. So when she drives her blade into Ragyo, her own mother, during the grand festival, I had to physically sit back and process what just happened. Everything she'd built, the student council, the fear, the Goku uniforms, the reputation, was never about tyranny. It was architecture, a rebellion disguised as a dictatorship, constructed over years with terrifying patience. She played every single person around her, including the audience, and never once broke character. What makes this betrayal so satisfying is that Satsuki never flinched, never hesitated, never asked for permission. She looked the most dangerous woman in her world dead in the eye and chose war. Cold, calculated, legendary.
このところ波の出荷が続いているが、ようやく10物以上収穫できるな、イザベラ。
はい。
このフルスコア3匹も出荷できるよう仕上げておけ。
かしこまりました。
There's something uniquely unsettling about a warm smile that means nothing. Isabella felt like safety. The lullaby before sleep, the gentle hand on the shoulder, the one adult in Gracefield House who made everything feel okay. And that's exactly why the reveal was carved so deep. She wasn't protecting those children, she was fattening the livestock. I remember watching Emma piece the truth together and feeling my stomach drop in real time because every warm memory suddenly became evidence. The worst part isn't that Isabella deceived them, it's that she understood love well enough to perform it flawlessly. She knew those kids adored her, and she maintained that adoration on purpose because affection made them easier to manage. When she calmly snaps that scene with the tracking device, smiling as if nothing changed, the show stops being a thriller. It becomes a horror story wearing a mother's face.
魔法少女との契約を取り結ぶ僕の役目はね、君たちの魂を抜き取ってソウルジェムに変えることなのさ。てめえはなんてことを。ふざけんじゃねえ。それじゃあ私たちゾンビにされたようなもんじゃないか。むしろ便利だろ。
Wadoka Magica spends its first 3 episodes pretending to be a cute magical girl show, and Kyubi sits at the center of that performance. Wide, unblinking eyes, a voice so cheerful it should have raised every red flag in existence. But I trusted the genre. I trusted the pastel colors and the transformation sequences. And then the show peeled everything back and revealed that every wish was a transaction. Souls harvested, hope converted into energy, and teenage girls turned into fuel for a cosmic quota that doesn't care whether they survive. Kyubi never lied. That's what makes it unbearable. Every contract was technically transparent. He just never volunteered the fine print, never clarified the cost, never once thought it was his responsibility to. There's no evil laugh, no villain monologue, just cold, utilitarian logic operating behind the face of a mascot. Somehow, the absence of malice makes the whole thing feel worse than if he'd been cruel on purpose.
そんな嘘。どうして。
私が第99代ブリタニア皇帝ルルーシュビ・ブリタニアです。
なんと
ルルーシュ。
Most betrayals come from the shadows. Lelouch committed his under stadium lights in front of the entire world and called it strategy. The Zero Requiem is one of those rare moments where betrayal and sacrifice collapse into the same act, impossible to separate, painful from every angle. He transformed himself into a tyrant so absolute, so universally despised, that his assassination would become the foundation for peace. I still sit with the audacity of that decision. He betrayed his closest friends, his sister's trust. His identity is zero, not out of selfishness, because he'd run the numbers and decided his life was the cheapest price the world would accept. The throne was never the destination, the blade was. And when Suzaku finally drives it home, it doesn't land like justice or revenge. It lands like the most agonizing act of love I've ever seen put to animation. I wasn't ready.
戦士として最後まで責任を果たすことだ。ライダー、やるんだな。今ここで。勝負は今ここで決める。
Here's the thing about this scene. Structurally, it shouldn't work. There's no dramatic build-up, no villain monologue. Reiner just says it, mid-conversation, on top of a wall, like he's confessing to borrowing someone's pen and forgetting to return it. I'm the armored titan, he's the colossal. And Eren just stares. I'd spent entire arcs watching Reiner fight alongside the scouts, shielding comrades, earning trust through blood and sweat. Then, in one mumbled confession, every single memory gets rewritten into something nauseating. The body language, that spoke a lot. Berthold standing behind Reiner, barely breathing, clearly terrified of what's about to happen. These weren't criminal masterminds executing a grand scheme. They were exhausted kids who had been living inside a lie so long they'd started losing track of which version of themselves was even real anymore. That's not drama, that's tragedy.
Lucius Artorius Castus. よこそはこのブリタニアの地を滑るべき正統の王である。今だ、モルドー！
Vinland Saga builds Askeladd across dozens of episodes as a manipulator, a survivor, a killer who measures every move by what it costs. Never a patriot, never sentimental. So when he steps forward in that throne room and takes King Swain's head in a single stroke, it detonates like a charge buried under 20 episodes of setup. This wasn't insanity. This was the one sincere act from a man who'd smothered every honest instinct under decades of scheming and self-preservation. He killed a king to protect Wales, a homeland he'd never spoken about with pride, never toasted, never once openly mourned, but clearly never stopped carrying either. And then there's Thorfinn. I watched his face collapse in real time. His entire reason for living, revenge against Askeladd, suddenly had nowhere to land. The man he'd sworn to kill had just thrown his life away for something Thorfinn couldn't even begin to understand yet. Devastating.
だったらなんでひなもりは殺した？ 殺してゆくのは情けだと思わないか？そうかよ。キラもひなもりもあんたの手のひらで転がされてただけってわけかよ。君もだ、アバライ君。よくわかったぜ。俺の知ってるアイゼン隊長じゃねえってことがな。もう自分の知るアイゼン宗介ではないか。君の知るアイゼン宗介など最初からどこにも言いはしない。
Let me talk about a man who faked his own death, manipulated an entire military institution from the inside, emotionally gaslit his lieutenant into years of dependency, orchestrated a war, and then walked away smiling like he just finished a pleasant brunch. Aizen's betrayal during Soul Society isn't just a twist, it's a full redecoration of the story you thought you were watching. I remember genuinely mourning this man, thinking he was too kind for the Gote 13, too gentle for the brutality around him, and then he's standing there, alive, glasses off, hair pushed back, looking like a completely different person wearing the same skin. The physical transformation alone would have been enough to make the scene iconic, but what elevates it is the precision, the way he calmly disassembles every alliance, every assumption, every emotional bond his former colleagues held almost tenderly, like he's doing them a favor by showing them the truth. Theatrical, surgical, unforgettable. I need to talk about Rachel because no character in anime has made me feel this personally disrespected. Bam climbed an entire tower for this girl. She was his sky, his reason, his whole emotional compass pointing toward one person. He fought things that should have killed him 10 times over, bled through floors he had no business surviving, and kept going because she was at the top. And at the exact moment he finally reaches her, at the 1 second where the story could have exhaled into something gentle, she pushes him off the edge. No hesitation, no tears, just ambition wearing a familiar face. The thing that guts me about Rachel isn't the act itself, it's the awareness behind it. She watched Bam nearly destroy himself for her sake and still decided her dream weighed more than his life. There's no tragic justification buried underneath, no hidden nobility. Rachel chose herself, and I have never forgiven a fictional character with more conviction.
大いなる野菜の時が216年に一度の宴の時諸君が
There is no betrayal in anime, in all of fiction maybe, that leaves a mark the way the eclipse does. Griffith was everything to the Band of the Hawk, their leader, their symbol. The man Guts would have followed into any battlefield without question. And when the Crimson Behelit activates, Griffith doesn't just turn on them, he offers every single one of his comrades, people who bled for his dream, who worshipped the ground his ambition walked on as a blood sacrifice for his own ascension. I've revisited this scene more times than I should admit. It never softens. The horror isn't only the violence, though the violence is suffocating, it's the silence before the choice. It's watching a man you respected as a character weigh his humanity against godhood and let it go without flinching. Griffith's betrayal doesn't just twist the story, it salts the earth where the story used to grow. Nothing in Berserk recovers. Nothing is okay again. And honestly, neither was I. And that's the list. Betrayals that didn't just change their stories, they changed how I watched anime going forward. Some of these I saw coming and still couldn't brace for. Others blindsided me so completely that I had to pause the episode and just sit in silence for a full minute. That's what separates a good twist from a great betrayal. It doesn't just shock you in the moment, it poisons every scene that came before it. If any of these hit you just as hard, drop your pick in the comments. And if I missed one that personally ruined your week, tell me, because I could fill a part 2 without breaking a sweat. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.